Welcome back. The biggest news in movies this weekend is the opening of the latest and last Star Wars movie, The Rise of Skywalker. But the trend in the movie business, arguably, is actually a larger story. 3 movies that are all getting a ton of Oscar buzz. They're produced by Netflix. That means people can watch at home instead of heading to the theaters. I'm talking about Scorsese's The Irishman, A Marriage Story starring Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, and The Two Popes starring Anthony Hopkins and Jonathan Pryce. Let's bring in our next guest to discuss, Sam Adams. He's a senior culture editor at Slate, and he's also written about the movies for Rolling Stone, Los Angeles Times, Variety, and many more. Sam, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard.
Well, first, let's get into Skywalker right off the bat here. I was looking at prior reviews of, the litany of the Star Wars movies, and critically, a lot of them didn't fare well, but obviously set all kinds of records at box offices. Does the review and how this is, being graded on its merits artistically, will that resonate with fans, or they just don't care?
I think fans probably don't care, and speaking as a critic, that's fine with me. People want to see how the Star Wars saga ends. I did too. I wouldn't begrudge anybody that. I am seeing, from fans who were going to the first screenings starting last night, people who've been waiting for this thing for months and years, that there's a lot of disappointment already out there.
There's a few movies that I've heard great things about, and from your take, I'm curious if you had to pick one, and they're all albeit different, which one do you think is the best ticket? And that is Uncut Gems. You got Adam Sandler already. People are talking about it. It's one of the best performances, if not the best of his career. Also, Ford versus Ferrari. I've heard terrific things about it. And then, among others, Knives Out. I've heard interesting things, and also, the story with Richard Jewell, which has its share of controversy from certainly the Atlanta Constitution newspaper, saying they've taken gross liberties with the depiction of the reporter. But nonetheless, of those movies, where would you say that fans will not regret putting their money down for a ticket because they're going to get a good show?
All right, I'm going to cheat slightly and mention 2. Ford versus Ferrari, which you mentioned is a big sort of car racing movie. That's really kind of an essential thing to see on the big screen and a lot of fun. Very pretty, kind of a great, dad movie, among other things. Uncut Gems is a much tougher movie to watch. It's a really kind of incredibly frenetic, chaotic movie with Adam Sandler kind of playing this Diamond District hustler in New York. As some friends of mine have described it as basically the equivalent of having a heart attack watching the movie. It's very, very tense. And as a result, I think it's something that you actually want to go out and see in a theater, because seeing it at home, I think the temptation to turn it off or run out of the room would be very strong, but it's very much worth getting to the end.
It's funny, Sam, you've mentioned now in both of those seeing it in the theater, and that brings me to this broader question, which is whether it's just to qualify for the awards, you have to show a movie in the theater, but nonetheless, Netflix is having short runs on the aforementioned movies, The Irishman, A Marriage Story, The Two Popes, and then it's going right, so people can consume it where they want, at home conceivably. Is that good or bad for the movie industry? Because I'll take myself. I looked at 3.5 hours, and I probably would have gone to see The Irishman if my only choice was to see it in the theater rather than wait many months later until it went to cable. But I chose not to because I figured I got Netflix. I'm just going to go see it in a couple weeks when I can watch in the comfort of my own home. Is that good for the film industry or not?
Well, I think primarily what's good for movies is that movies get made and that people see them. And so in that case, Netflix is a good thing. Hollywood had more than 10 years to give Martin Scorsese enough movie to make The Irishman, and they declined. Netflix gave him $175 million and the movie got made, and now people can see it, and that's a good thing. I think it is, as you mentioned, 3.5 hours. I think despite the time commitment and having to pay the babysitter and everything else, it is really something that's worth seeing in the theater. It's a very kind of slow-burning movie with a big payoff in the last half hour, and I think if you split that up like a mini-series and watch it over 3 or 4 nights, you're really going to miss that experience. But people are going to watch movies how they want to watch them, and I think it's more important that they do see them than where they see them.
Sam, in preparation for this interview, my producer mentioned that he recently saw The Godfather in an art house in a theater, and all of us have seen it on cable countless times. Obviously, the commercial breaks. We all know the movie, so we can come in and out of it. He was blown away, even though he had seen the movie countless times, the experience of seeing it again in the theater. And he said, walking out, that was the dominant point of conversation from people who knew every line of dialogue already, just how much of a different experience it was seeing it in a theater. Will movies be made differently because of these changing consumption models? I mean, you mentioned Ford versus Ferrari. I bet you're 100% right. To see it with surround sound on an IMAX screen or whatever the case may be, a lot different than seeing it, you know, at home on your plasma in your living room. You know, will it change the way even movies are made?
I mean, it definitely has changed the way movies are made, just as home video did before it. I mean, among kind of smaller things, it means there's just going to be a lot more kind of, close-up shots, a lot fewer kind of big widescreen shots where you can make out what's going on in them on a big screen, but you can't on a TV. It also means that things are going to be, faster and kind of cut more quickly and probably give you more places to pause and kind of reiterate the action in the middle because they assume that everyone's not going to be watching it straight through.
And on that note, Sam, I appreciate the time and happy holidays to you as well.
You too. Thank you.
All right, everybody, when we come back, we'll wrap things up. Stay with us.